Hi guys and welcome to Crypto Exposed. Okay, I saw a recent video by Andrei Jikh and I wanted to cover this because I'm sure for you guys out here who are, the supporters of XRP in terms of the huge, the huge number theories, this is probably something that's going to get your attention. So, the title of the video is called China is Preparing for $38,000 Gold. Okay, so I'm not going to go through the whole meaning of the video, but I'm just going to give you like the basic premise, right? And then I'll relay how this can obviously refer back to XRP, because it is kind of interesting, I will say that, but I'm going to get into it and obviously then we can have the conversation. So, Andrei Jikh has done a video, as I say, talking about China preparing for a $38,000 gold. So what's he talking about here? He's basically saying that China are buying gold in, mass amounts, right? And what he's ultimately saying here is, he believes eventually over time, gold is going to get up to $38,000. Now, why does he believe this? Well, what he's basically saying is that the dollar is losing its dominance, right? He's feeling like it's going to come to a point soon where the dollar collapses or at the very least it loses its world reserve currency status, right? Now, in that regard, I have to agree. I think that's a very real possibility over time. I don't know how long that could take, but the way the dollar is being devalued, to be honest with you, just fiat currency in general, right? Like every country are just, absolutely obliterating the value of the currency by keep borrowing and printing money, that kind of stuff. Like they're just debasing it, right? So that's just naturally what's going to happen in the end. So what he's saying is that we're going to need a neutral asset in the future to do trade. And he believes gold is what's going to be the neutral asset. And he said, the thing is with gold, they need it to be roughly around $38,000 to be able to, handle all the world global settlement. And so I was starting to hear this and I was like, this sounds a lot like the $10,000 XRP theory, right? Does that not sound very familiar? You want a neutral asset that you can use. It needs to be a certain price so it can handle all of the world reserves settlement, global settlement, that kind of thing. Sounds a lot like XRP. And I found that really interesting because obviously a lot of people still believe in this $10,000 theory, but this is why I wanted to go through this with you and just give you my thoughts about this because Andrei Jikh is a well-educated content creator. I'll give him that. His content is good, but I do want to poke a few holes in this and tell you why I'm not 100% convinced exactly. But even if it was going to happen, I'll explain how I think this, relates back to XRP and what I think about that. Okay, so let's get into just poking holes in regards to the theory. So I'm not necessarily saying that this isn't going to happen because at the end of the day, it's a very plausible theory, to be honest with you. So the only thing that I'm saying here is the way he's talking about this, he's saying that he believes this is going to take decades to happen. Now, my thing is this. The only thing I'll say in that regard is if we can see where the world is heading, right, and we know that, the world's getting into a lot of problems in terms of borrowing and debt and printing money and that kind of thing, putting something in place for decades to come, it's like, yes, okay, it's a good plan for the long-term future, but what about the immediate future, right? Because it's like, if it's going to take decades, like China could be, and obviously other countries, I'm not just saying China specifically are based in this, but the other countries in China could be in a world of trouble before that comes to pass. So to say that it's going to take that long, I would think that if this was something that they were going to do, I'd assume they'd be looking to try and get this done a lot sooner. Now that again doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. The other thing is, I look at what America are doing right now, and America are fighting for dominance. When we look at everything that's going on, with America and what's been happening lately, especially with Iran as well, they're trying to, flex their dominance ultimately, right? They want to show that they're still the dominant country. And I think this is where, they've kind of got caught with their pants down a little bit, to be honest with you. They've been exposed a little bit to not as dominant as they like to make themselves out to be. I think it's been a bit telling, to be honest with you. And I just think that America are going to fight their absolute best to try and avoid that happening, because if this does happen, then make no mistake that the dollar is no longer the world reserve currency. And I just don't think America are going to give that up without a fight. So I think America are going to do their absolute best to try and avoid that happening. Now, whether they can avoid that happening, I don't know, right? But there's been a theory that a political Russian figure has said about America basically wanting to use cryptocurrency to pay off the debt. So they wanted to basically like devalue stablecoins by putting the debt into stablecoins, devaluing these stablecoins, and then basically like doing a reset through cryptocurrency. So again, will that happen? I don't know. But these are things that they're trying to do to try and maintain their dominance. And obviously, if you're using things like stablecoins, the main stablecoin is going to be the dollar-backed stablecoin, right? So in the end, that's how the dollar could maintain its world reserve currency status and dominance. So like there are things that are in place where they're trying to obviously keep that status. So this is what I'm saying, like I don't think this is something that's set in stone. Now maybe that's what China are preparing for and hoping for, but whether it will actually come to pass, time will tell. So putting this back to XRP then. So obviously, as we know, that's basically the same kind of idea of what XRP is in terms of the $10,000 theory. It's they need an asset that's neutral, jurisdictionless, right? And they need it to be a certain price to be able to settle global trade. Now, for you guys who, follow my channel, for me personally, I'm not convinced that that's going to happen. And this is kind of like an example here, because if we look at what they're doing, what China are doing, they're not buying XRP, they're buying gold. So if they're really looking to put their money in anything to try and, put up a high number and do all these global settlements, they're going with gold here. They're not going with XRP. So that straight away puts a bit of a spanner in the works, right, for XRP. Also, Andrei Jikh, he's not like outright said he's a conspiracy theorist, but there was a video that he did, and I can't remember which one it was because I do watch a lot of his videos. But he basically said, look, I'm not going to tell you what I think because you'll just think I'm a conspiracy theorist. But basically, he said, I believe a lot of this stuff that's happening has already been discussed. I think we're just watching it unfold, and this is all just basically like theatre. The world's a stage, as they say, basically. So he's admitted that he's into conspiracy theories, and he believes a lot of the stuff that we watch going on right now is all just staged and not real. Like we're just watching a play come out, right? So this clearly really, it's a conspiracy theory. We don't know for sure if this is going to happen, right? And Andrei Jikh, he's not a fan of XRP. He's not. I'm sorry, we've seen videos of him in the past. I remember his very first video, and it was titled "Avoid This Cryptocurrency," and it was XRP. So he's not a fan of XRP, which, don't get me wrong, if you don't like it, that's fine. Like I'm not knocking him here, but that can clearly have an effect on the way you think about XRP, right? So, like would Andrei Jikh, if he was to hear the theory of XRP going to $10,000, which I'm sure he probably has heard, would he give that more credibility if he was a lot more positive about XRP? Because the thing is, what he's saying about gold is essentially saying everything that they say about XRP. So it's really no different. You're just changing the asset. That's literally all that's happening. But the whole reason behind it is it's the same thing. It's the same reasons. So I do question if, like the whole thing about gold, like you could kind of swap that for XRP. But again, as we're seeing here, if we go by what China's actions are, which we can see, we can like prove what they're doing, they're buying gold. So once again, if you say to me like, now, does this prove the XRP $10,000 theory? Well, no, it doesn't, because they're not doing that, are they? We're not seeing them buy exuberant amounts of XRP. They're buying gold. So it would clearly indicate that they're going more with gold to do this kind of stuff, not XRP. The other thing is, as Andrei Jikh said here, like he believes that if this was going to happen, it's going to take decades. So even if you was thinking about this from the XRP side of things, right, this isn't this overnight flip the switch theory that a lot of people talk about. This is, hey, they're going to do it slowly over time. It's going to take decades to actually come to pass. Now, again, I'm not going to lie, I'd be surprised that they'd be willing to wait that long, especially if they want China to have dominance. But I can understand that maybe these things just can't happen that quick. So I'll be surprised in the sense of they're willing to wait that long. Because if you think about decades, like there's going to be people who won't even be here at that point, right? There's going to be politicians and people in government who won't even be alive to see it come to pass. So they really are thinking long term here. But if that's what they feel is for the benefit of the country, then they might be willing to do that, right? Like this is like a generational play. So I'm not saying that negates it or anything like that. I just thought they would want a bit more of an immediate solution. But I'm just speculating here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to act like I'm more knowledgeable than Andrei, Jikh or anything like that. We're all just speculating on this. So, you know, it doesn't mean I'm right. I don't know for sure. But the evidence is there. So again, if we're talking about this taking place, if it was gold, it's something that's going to take, you know, decades, as he said. So at the end of the day, like for people who's hoping for this for XRP, this shows you that it's not something that's going to happen overnight anyway. So even if this was the case, then, you know, again, this would probably have to be a generational play for your kids to get to that kind of price. And the question I will just add to this as well, if we're talking about decades, right? If let's just say the dollar does get completely like debased due to inflation and printing and stuff like that, what would the value of $38,000 gold be in regards to the dollar though? Because if you talk $38,000 gold now, that's high. But if inflation goes through the roof, well, what kind of price would that $38,000 be? Because that $38,000 could be, you know, it could be like $1,000 for a loaf of bread in the future if we get ridiculous inflation. So how much would that $38,000 be worth at the time? Now, I'm assuming he's talking about today's value. That would be my assumption. But yeah, like, are they, you know, thinking about inflation when they say that? Because, you know, or are they just not going by inflation at all at that point? Are they just talking about just gold itself and not comparing it to like the dollar or anything like that? I don't know. Like, it wasn't spoke about that in depth. But those are just little questions I have. But yeah, it is an interesting video. So, you know, if you guys are interested, I definitely, you know, recommend you give it a watch, because when I was watching it, I was like, that's crazy. Like, that literally is just like the $10,000 theory. It really was just hearing it like verbatim, but just swapping it with gold. So if you guys want to hear it, like, I definitely recommend you give it a watch. It is interesting. But yeah, like, obviously, guys, tell me your thoughts about this. I just found it intriguing, so I thought I'd cover it. But shout out to Andrei, because it is a good video. He's been doing really good with the content lately, I do have to say. He's been putting out some really good videos, so shout out to him. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, guys. I'll be interested to hear. All right, I'll leave it there. If you did like this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe so you can be updated for future XRP content. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can be alerted on when I do drop a new video. Thank you very much for watching this, and I'll see you all on the next one.